I thought I knew the story of Jesus, but then I saw this. Several New Testament authors make a stunning claim that Jesus was on the earth hundreds of years before he was born, leading the people out of Egypt and to battle against the giants known as Nephilim. But is this true? After all, other than Jude, the New Testament authors weren't real blunt about it. There is a way to solve this and get some clarity. We can ask, what did Jesus say about this? Did he ever say anything to confirm or deny that he was actually on the earth hundreds of years before being born? Let's find out. There's one chapter that contains a major clue. One day Jesus went to the temple and he was confronted by some religious leaders who weren't big fans of him. They were trying to find a way to get him killed, basically frame him. This time, Jesus would give them the ammunition they needed and the answers we're looking for. The religious leaders got into a debate with Jesus. What he said offended them so much that they picked up rocks to try to stone him to death. No due process, no trial, nothing. Jesus would escape for now, but what he said would ultimately lead to his death. So what did he say, and what was so shocking that it was worthy of an on-the-spot execution? The phrase in question comes from John chapter 8, verse 58. It's where Jesus says, "Before Abraham was, I am." Now, when you first hear that, you might be wondering, what's the big deal? Jesus saying he was older than Abraham, a guy who existed hundreds of years earlier. I mean, that's pretty strange, but that's actually not the most shocking part of his statement. It might not seem like a big deal at first, but those words, "I am," come from the Old Testament, and they mean something that's a pretty big deal. We have to go back in time now to find out what it is. Exodus chapter 3. It's a famous story where Moses saw something really odd, a bush on fire, but it never burned up. Moses approached the bush to investigate, and a voice spoke out of it to Moses from within the bush. It knew him. It called him by name. It's a very famous story, but there's one detail here that sometimes goes unnoticed. When it's missed, we're missing something huge. Let's see if you can catch it. Verse 2 says, "And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush." It appears that Moses saw somebody standing in the flames in the bush. Now we're faced with a mystery. Who is Moses talking to? The angel or God? There's actually a clue in verse 6. We know the figure in the bush was the angel of the Lord, but verse 6 says Moses was afraid to look at God. What is going on here? If it seems unclear, we can look at a similar passage to get some clarity. It's Judges chapter 6, verse 22. And here, the same angel, the angel of the Lord, appeared to Gideon. But Gideon did not understand who the angel was at first. He thought the angel was just a messenger from God. Like many people today still assume the angel of the Lord was just a messenger. So Gideon brought the angel some food. Things are about to get really weird. It says the angel had a staff in his hand. With it, the angel touched the food from Gideon, which immediately burned up, and the angel vanished from sight. Then Gideon freaked out because he thought he was gonna die. Now this might seem a little confusing, but I'll give you a hint. Have you ever heard someone say that no man can see God and live? That is exactly what Moses and Gideon believed. So if we put 2 and 2 together, well, this passage tells us that Gideon and Moses thought they were looking at God. It tells us that the angel of the Lord is God, appearing in the form of a man. Now, if you've been on this channel for a while, this view is not unusual to you. We've been covering it in this series for a while. But why didn't Gideon and Moses die? If they saw God, well, why didn't they die? Let's consult someone who spent their whole life studying these questions. Scholar Dr. Michael Heiser, who I learned after in theology school. He described the angel of the Lord as God appearing in a filtered form. It's a way that people could see God visibly without dying. To read Heiser's book, check the links in the description. He's got some amazing stuff. It will change your life. And he's done some amazing work on the angel of the Lord. But some disagree with these opinions. So what's the counter theory? Well, many people today teach that the angel was simply a messenger who spoke on God's behalf, but not God himself. But there's a hole in this theory. If that's true, why do Moses and Gideon think they're going to die? Why did they both think they saw God? That presents a problem for this theory. I'll let you wrestle with that for yourself, but let's proceed assuming that the angel of the Lord is God in the form of a man, as Michael Heiser suggests. What does this have to do with Jesus? We have to plug that idea, everything we've learned, back into Exodus chapter 3. At the burning bush, God told Moses his name. Can you guess what it was? He didn't say the names you'd expect, like God or Yahweh. He said his name is I Am. Kind of a strange name to us modern people today, but take a look at the translation of the Old Testament that the New Testament writers would have been reading from, like John. It's called the Greek Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament. Let's compare the name of God that God told to Moses to what Jesus said when he said, I am. Take a look. It's a perfect match. Now we can answer the question of what offended the religious leaders to the point of trying to stone Jesus to death. He said he was God, but using the title I am. Now, using that title implies more than Jesus is just God. The words Jesus spoke have more ramifications throughout the Bible. If the angel of the Lord is God and Jesus is God, then doesn't that mean that Jesus is saying he is also the angel of the Lord? What happens to our understanding of other stories in the Old Testament if we plug Jesus in place of the angel of the Lord? Was it Jesus who stopped Abraham from sacrificing his only son Isaac? Was it Jesus who parted the Red Sea? Was it Jesus who led the people through the wilderness? Was it Jesus who appeared with a sword while the Israelites went on a conquest against the giants known as the Nephilim? All this time, was Jesus there guiding in the early days of the Bible when some of it was being written? These are questions we explore on this channel, so watch this video next.